Let's talk about Trump's tariffs. This is his fact sheet. He's basically labeling our trade deficit as a national emergency to use IEEPA. That stands for the International Emergencies Economic Powers Act. It was signed in 1977 and it gives the president more individual power over economic policies. Before we get into all the tariffs, it's important to know that the formula used to calculate tariffs doesn't make sense even to begin with. On April 5th, Trump imposed a 10% tariff on all countries, or virtually all countries. On April 9th, additional tariffs are going to be designated to countries that have a higher trade deficit. This will put our average tariff rate at 22%, the highest it's been since 1909. Steel, aluminum, and car parts have all been exempt from these tariffs because they already have tariffs put on them. Also, goods complying with the USMCA Act are also exempt. The implication in his fact sheet is that other countries having any sort of infrastructure is actually bad for us somehow. Unfortunately, we're not able to grow everything in the US. There's stuff like coffee and vanilla that we can't grow here, so we need to buy it from international sources. And also, for better or worse, labor is cheaper in a lot of other countries than it is here. From an economic perspective, Goldman Sachs has raised the likelihood of a recession for the US to 22%. 35. From 20 to 35, that's so much higher than I thought it was. Just to talk about tariffs as a tool, it's generally used to give local production an advantage over international production. This is intrinsically nationalistic oriented because if you're going to raise prices for international goods, obviously you're going to want to develop more local goods and national trades. And nationalism, or ultra-nationalism to be more specific, is one of the key factors of a fascist state. Not to say we definitively live in a fascist state right now, but obviously this is just one of the contributing factors that's leading to fascism. I want to bring up the Smoot-Hawley Act again. I brought this up in a video about 3 weeks ago, but it's very important right now. Basically, in 1930, they made a similar mistake of raising tariffs. In that case, it was by 25%, and it was one of the key factors that led to the Great Depression. And you see the immediate aftermath of placing these tariffs in the S&P 500 and other stocks. These tariffs are projected to affect low-income people the most. While importers pay the initial tariff, consumers end up paying additional costs because of these tariffs being put in place. I'm going to go over some of these specific tariffs now. China was hit with about 54% tariffs. They have already responded and put 34% tariffs on a collection of US goods. The EU was hit with about 20% in tariffs. The leaders are all pretty unified in condemning the tariffs, and they haven't made a direct response yet, but they're very close to making one. The UK was hit with 10% tariffs. They're in a similar position to the EU. They haven't really responded yet. Australia was hit with 10% tariffs. They were also upset because some smaller islands were specified in his tariff calls for no reason. This is a quote from Albanese. He said, quote, "This is not the act of a friend," end quote. Canada wasn't hit with the 10% tariffs because of the USMCA Act. They did have the 25% automotive tariff. These tariffs were removed by the Senate on Wednesday, though, so at the moment, they're receiving no extra tariffs from Trump. This is a quote from the new Prime Minister of Canada. Quote, "The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War is over," end quote. Olusanola, a U.S. economist, said this on Wednesday. Quote, "This is a game changer not only for the U.S. economy, but for the global economy. Many countries will likely end up in a recession. You can throw most forecasts out the door if this tariff rate stays on for an extended period of time," end quote. So in summary, shit sucks. Tariffs are stupid. If they don't get removed, we're fucked.